Welcome back to Becoming Mama, and welcome to the first ever Witch and the Woo episode. Welcome to Becoming Mama, the podcast where two long-lost best friends discuss all things motherhood. My name is Sam, and I'm joined by my co-host, Emmy.
Hi, I'm Emmy, a certified birth story listener and mom of 3.
And today we have a little different episode for you. We are calling this podcast The Witch and the Woo. It is a little series we're going to be dropping in here and there. We're dropping it the first time on Halloween because we find that to be very appropriate. But Emmy, what does Witch and the Woo come from?
We've mentioned before, we're both pretty quirky, and we have some different interests that might be like some of the listeners and might not at all. And this is one of those kinds of episodes and series where you're like, oh, like I really don't like tarot cards. They make me uncomfortable. And so you just skip this one because we're going to be talking about all things witchiness, woo-woo-ness, and that's how we came up with this episode because if you know me and who I am now, I am a self-proclaimed witch. Lauren and I, my sister, we discuss whether we're bloodline witches. We don't know. We don't have any ties to Salem or anything like that, unfortunately. But we're definitely self-proclaimed witches. And so that's where my witchiness comes from. Kind of just share what inspired me to be a witch and why I've shifted. So I grew up Catholic. So did Samantha. We definitely had that in common growing up. And it's a whole set of rituals, which I always liked. My love for that is something I've truly carried over into this practice, but it just allows me to feed like this inner spiritual aspect of myself that I feel if you're interested in being a healer and healing those around you, if you love the power of words, if you believe in magic and you believe in feeling deeply connected to the weather and seasons and change and shifts, and if you believe that truly anything in your life is possible and you have the audacity to call that in, I think that aligns with calling yourself a witch. And you pair that with my love for tarot and oracle decks and crystals and spells, and there you have it. That's me. So that would be kind of sum up my spiritual practice nowadays, and we're going to talk about some of those things on these episodes. And Samantha calls herself a woo, not a woo woo. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I always say that I am woo, not woo woo, because I believe in a lot of those same things. And as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, oh shit, am I a witch? Like I align with so much of that. I have my oracle deck in front of me. I have a sign right when you walk into our house that says you are magic. I want people to believe that they are magical and they are special and there's so much in you. And I think I talked about this in one of the podcasts, maybe I didn't. In 2020, I got really into manifestation and spirituality when I had the time during quarantine, and it totally changed my life, and it brought back a big aspect of spirituality and faith and hope and all the things I lost when I left the Catholic Church. And so I still have a lot of those same practices. I manifest, I like to do rituals when I remember, like the eclipse that just happened this past weekend. I did a little release ceremony, 5 minutes by myself. I pull cards from time to time, but I think for me where I struggle is there's always still that pragmatic self that gets in the way of me being woo woo, where I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this, but like, I don't really I know it's not real. I know I do think I let people's opinion of it get in the way of me fully embracing it and believing it, which is something that I released in my in my eclipse ritual this past weekend. So I'm not fully woo woo yet, but I love the way these things make me feel, and I'm kind of the mind that it's not hurting anybody. It only makes me feel good, and it only makes me feel more power in my own life, and I don't think that's a bad thing. So that's where I am the woo for now.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of listeners who are like, oh, I align with a couple of those things. Like, I love the crystal shop, or I love the way it feels when I hold a crystal in my hand, the energy that puts off. So I'm sure there's some of you out there that can relate at least a little bit.
And if you don't, this is your encouragement to just dabble in it. I feel like there's a lot of resistance around these type of things because we are so socialized to religion, right? Like it's the only way to have spiritual practices are to be religious. And we're seeing firsthand right now how much conflict religion can bring into the world, and how religion has a really negative connotation for a lot of people who aren't religious. And if you're religious, it's really easy, having been religious, it's really easy to dismiss anything outside of your religion. And when you practice spirituality like this, it really is just recognizing, at least to me, and I mean, you can throw your opinion in here, but spirituality to me is recognizing that we are all connected. Everyone is living a complex life, and we all come from the same source of energy, and that energy is
Love.
something that we can tap into.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this little thing called indoctrination, which is related heavily to religion and Christianity, will at times guide you to believe that there's only room for one idea. And I am here to tell you there's room for multiple ideas. And so you can hold both at the same time, and nothing bad will happen to you. Your life will only get better because you will feel more empowered, and you will feel stronger and happier, and you will feel more connected. So that's my take on it. And luckily, everybody out there gets to believe whatever they want.
Exactly. And this is where we sit right now.
Yeah.
And so with being open to different ideas, being open to the spiritual world, there are some fun things that come along with that, like believing that there is another side, and that we are in communication with other things, and we can be, and that there is a greater power than us, and that sometimes those things are still present in our lives. And so in this Halloween episode, we're going to be exploring some maybe spooky aspects of spirituality. Emmy has a scary story of her own. We have a couple listener stories we're going to share. And then I have I don't even know, I wouldn't say it's spooky, but a definite touch with the other side, I would say. So
I'm excited. I'm so excited for these.
I know, we do. We've talked about starting our own podcast network and having this be its own podcast. So just keep sharing this podcast with everybody, and then you can have all our crazy podcasts.
Yeah. I was definitely thinking like, oh, this is the one where they're going to hear it and be like, yeah, this isn't for me.
We will talk motherhood most of the time. This is just...
Yeah. And motherhood weaves itself into these things. So I firmly believe I have felt very connected to spirit and spirituality my entire life. I have very vivid experiences from a very young age. But motherhood lifts the veil. Birth lifts the veil. And interacting with your own kids, I don't know, I would say almost everyone I've talked to has said something like, oh, my kids said this weird thing, or saw this weird thing, or always waves at this spot in our house. You know, like there's always stories like that, because kids are more connected. And no matter what you believe in, the souls who pass over to the other side, I mean, everybody has a penny they see and they're like, oh, I feel like that was a sign. Like, you just can't deny it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I have a tattoo on my arm, which hopefully we'll be posting these on YouTube at this point so you can see this, but it's my birthday, but I see the number 726 all of the time, which is a really random number to see a lot, because it's not like a quarter, it's just a random number, and it's always when I ask for it, and I've always said it's a sign from my grandma, which if we want, I can jump into my story right now, because this is where it's about my grandma. Okay, so here we go.
Okay, but first I'm going to say that's called angel numbers, if you need a name for it. And everyone I know has their own. Everybody who talks this talk and walks this walk. Mine are 11/22, which is my birthday, and 203, which is the time I was born. And if I stray from my path, if I start dabbling in things, specifically career-wise, that are really not for me, the numbers disappear, and I start to realize like, oh, I haven't seen those numbers in a really long time, and that's a good sign. Okay. Or it's actually a bad sign. A good reminder that I need to check what I'm working on, check my values. Okay. Let's go. I want to hear this. I cannot wait.
Okay, we were going to do our peaks and pits, or our victories and defeats, but I think this is going to actually be a longer conversation than I anticipated, so I'm excited to just jump into this.
Okay.
All right. So like I said, I see 726 all the time. I just said that as I looked at 111 on the recorder, so angel number showing up again. But I see it all the time, and I've always thought that it was a sign from my grandma, and I don't have any uh, evidence of that. My grandma died when I was 4. I never got to really know her, but I've always felt really deeply connected to her.
And this is your
And
maternal grandmother?
yes, this is my
Okay.
mom's grandma. Her name, or my mom's mom. Her name was Grandma Pieces because she always said she loved us to pieces. And I just always felt like, I think part of it was not ever getting that grandma who was really present in my life. And so I always longed for that. But I always wondered if she would like me, if she would love me.
Hmm.
I used to make up stories about seeing her when I was like an older kid because I just wanted so badly to like be connected to her. And that's never really gone away. And so in last January, I was in a really not great place. Didn't know what to do. I was in a job that I didn't like. I knew that I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know what to do, and I just wanted clarity. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who lives next door, and she does some like energy work. And so I went over just to talk to her because she was practicing this, and she wanted people to practice on. And I was like, you know what? I'm in this place. Like, let's do it. Whatever. So I went over there and I'm like, I just feel like I need clarity. And she was like, you need to reach out to my friend Nia, who she's a medium, and it might just be something fun to do. And again, I'm in this like place where I'm like, whatever, like
I'll do
I don't
anything.
know what to do. I'll do anything. I reach out to Nia and I go to her website, and her sessions are called clarity sessions. So I was like, okay,
Yep.
of course. Synchronicity. So I book it, and by like happenstance, she has an appointment like 2 days from now, which is rare for her. And so I booked the session, and we have a really good call. We talk a lot about career. A lot of things were wonderful. And we talked a lot about my wanting a second child and how I was hesitant about it, and I didn't know if it was right, and I didn't know the right timing. And she said some really beautiful things that we can talk about when we talk about spirit babies, but essentially just said like, my baby's waiting for me, just like Teddy waited for you. And that was so true. um then at the end of the call, she was like, is there anything else you want to know? And I was like, I've never connected with my grandma before. And I just want to know if she's there. And like, I think I see her. I think I see her presence all the time, but I just don't know if that's her. And then I just started crying. And then she started crying, and she was like, just a second. And she took off her glasses, and she was like, I, oh, you're like, your grandma is such a bright light. She's like, but she's not alone. Did you lose your grandpa as well? And I was like, yeah, which, I mean, fair enough. Grandparents get old, they die. That's fair
Yep.
enough to guess. But then she was like, and there's another female presence with her. Did you lose your aunt as well? And I have. My aunt, I only have aunts on that side, and she passed away when I was like 21 of a really aggressive cancer, and it was really hard.
I have chills 3 times now already.
Oh, just wait. I have children already too. She said they're together, and she said they are watching you. And I have full body chills right now. Jesus. She said they're watching you, and she's like, and they love you so much, but you don't believe that they love you. Like, you think they will only love you out of obligation. Like, of course they love me. They're my grandparents. And I have said that so many times to my mom. I'm like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I always question if she loved me or not, and or would like me or would love me now. And I know she would love me because she's my grandma. Like, I've said that so many times. And she's like, they love you so much. Like, you are special to them. She's like, you're the oldest, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and you're the only girl, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you're you're special to them, and they love you so much, and it's not out of obligation. And so she said a couple other things, and I was just already shell shocked. And then she's like, they're showing me like a jump rope or a lasso. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I am sitting there trying to process that. And then it hit me. And 2 weeks prior, I had been doing a guided meditation, and I was sitting there. And usually I feel energy in my hands when I meditate. And this time when I was meditating, it like came up my body and like wrapped around me. And I thought, that's weird. I'm like, I wonder if that's my grandparents. But like, why would they be here? Like, if there's an afterlife, why would you just be watching me sit in a chair? And I am not kidding. The guided meditation that I had never listened to before, as I have the thought, why would they be here? The guided meditation says, the message you are receiving is that we are here. It said, we are here. We are love. and we will be here when you choose to connect and you choose connection over separation. And I was like, give me more, give me more, give me more. Like, it was the first time in my life I was like fully open to whatever this was, because it was so clearly a response to a thought that I had had.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to like keep it going, and I was just too shook by it all. So I ran downstairs and I told my husband the craziest thing just happened. Like, I felt like a lasso was wrapped around me. I felt like there was a rope around me. So when she said, I'm seeing like this lasso or this rope, I was like, when have I said the word lasso in my life?
0 times in your whole life.
Only to my son's Woody doll, maybe, but I don't even think he says lasso. And so I was like, that I told her the story, and she's like, that's them confirming that they were there and they are with you and they're watching over you. And yeah, I don't even remember anything after that, but that was like the one moment where I was like, okay, there's something to this. There's something else out there.
There's just too much serendipity.
That's so much. Like,
Yeah.
that's so much. So much.
That was a super vulnerable share, and so I'm gonna share my vulnerable story, even though I'm afraid. But I'm
Okay.
not gonna share it yet because I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, can you see them?
I haven't tried. I
Okay.
haven't tried. It sounds weird to say, but I have a feeling I could. Like, I feel like right now I feel like energy all around me. Like, it's
Yeah.
like pressure in my ears kind of feeling, which is a little alarming. I don't know if I've ever felt this, and it feels weird to say that on this podcast. People are gonna think I'm like schizophrenic, but I'm not kidding. Like, I feel like heat and pressure all around me, which I have no explanation for. So maybe I could. I don't know. Any
Okay.
tips?
I would actually have to dig into that a little bit. I can see my spirit guides. I probably shouldn't say this stuff out loud. It's like a corner of your eye type thing, and it was a very specific meditation that taught me how to do it. And what I realized when I did that was that they were always there. I just didn't notice before. Like, the presence is there, and you're like, oh, I've always seen them. Once you, some people call it opening the third eye. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a
No.
good story. I love it. Very spooky. I hope everyone got chills. I also felt it's actually lifted now, but I felt the energy you were talking about.
Yeah.
Whew.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I love that story. I will cherish it forever. And I'm so like, had this tattoo for 3 years, but it like just means a lot more to me now that I had that experience too. So I love that that's on me.
Well, and you have a Grandma Pieces tattoo, don't you?
I do. Yep, I do. I have that on my hip. I got when I
Okay.
was like 18. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So clearly, it's been a line. It's been
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
thread through your life. Okay. So, all right, I'll share my story, and then we'll both share our stories that were submitted to us.
Perfect.
Okay. So, I wasn't planning to share this, so I did not create an outline. So I'm gonna try to be concise and communicate clearly. Okay, so one night I was laying awake, which is not something I do very often. Okay, and I was doing something I don't ever do, which was listening to an audiobook with my AirPods in bed at night to
Mm-hmm.
fall asleep. And it was actually in the middle of my birth story listening training. And so I was listening to this book called The Tracker, and it's all about how Native Americans and people who know tracking know how to track animals in the wild and look at their patterns and are able to understand things about them and hunt and do all of these things. But it's a very, very spiritual practice for
Mm-hmm.
them, and something that I just think is so interesting. Like, if you truly get into that, wow, it's like a whole nother world. But I was listening to this and I fell asleep. And at some point, the audio stopped. So I woke up and I was in that sleep paralysis feeling. So I couldn't actually move, but I didn't realize that at the time. And I moved my eyes. Evie sleeps between us. I moved my eyes to the left over her. And there is a figure. It is a rectangle. And I notice it. I notice it hovering over her. I feel the essence of it. And it feels like I have to be here, but I don't know why I'm here. And then, like the corner of a book, the left top corner,
Mhm.
turns toward me like a glance, like it notices I'm noticing it, and it shifts away. And so at this point, the sleep paralysis wears off. And I message my sister and I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm never going back to sleep. This is like literally like a ghost story. And I have never experienced anything like that before where I felt like the other side and I made a legit connection.
Oh my
And
god.
it was with a presence that I didn't understand. And so I'm like Googling, and fortunately for that night, I found some resources that were like, this is actually a really common thing. Your visual cortex is one of the most lazy parts of your brain.
Mhm.
And so if you wake up and your sleep paralysis is in effect, it will show you something really scary to
Mm.
keep you still. So you
Mhm.
don't try to hurt yourself. So you don't try to get up. And so I was like, oh, sweet relief. And then
Yeah.
the next morning I was like, nope, that thing winked at me. Like, I wish that explained all of it.
Yeah.
And so I go back and I'm rereading these sleep paralysis articles. And at the bottom, it's like, and caveat, like, a lot of people say, like, this isn't the full explanation. Like, even scientists are like, we wish this would explain it all, but it doesn't. And so
Oh.
contacted our local angel reader and did an angel reading. And also dove into some other witchy resources I have, thankfully, that my sister connected me with. And found out that this is actually not that uncommon, that young children and babies will have presences that maybe hover over them while they're sleeping in order to like protect them, or a past life mother, a past
Mhm.
life father, something like that. And so before I actually contacted the angel reader, got some dowsing rods. Don't know if you know what those are. They're something you hold in your hand and they move to communicate. You can communicate yes or no
Mm.
with them, and they are creepy. Don't mess with them if you don't want answers.
Oh my gosh.
You can get them on Amazon. So did that, got some answers I really didn't understand, that really made me feel nervous because
Mhm.
Evie, I perceive her as somewhat vulnerable because of the health challenges that she has.
Mhm.
And so that's why I reached out to the angel reader, who is actually also one of my social media clients, so I know her already.
Yeah.
We had a conversation, and her perspective was essentially that this is a woman who at some point came into contact with Evie and was searching and was lonely and needed someone to connect with. And
Mhm.
she is the sweetest, most like beautiful, happy, vibrant child. So she would be very easy to connect with.
Mhm.
And essentially the spirit just needed permission that like
Mm.
you're it's just really not appropriate for you to be here. You're waking her up at night. You are making yourself known. You're scaring people, and you need to know that it's okay to go.
Mhm.
So I had that conversation, and hasn't been back since.
Oh my god. I would die. Had you had sleep paralysis before?
I've definitely woken up and my arms and legs are still tingly. That kind of thing where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, it's hard to lift up my hand, you know?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
nothing like that. Nothing where I like saw a vision, or like a lot of people will report like seeing someone in the corner or like
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
This was a different ball game.
When I was a kid, I would have times where I would wake up, be unable to move, and see like dark entities, like I like just darkness in
Mhm.
places, and I always just thought they were bad dreams. But then I
Mm,
started to like think about it more, and I was like, "But I am awake. Like
yeah.
I know I'm awake." And it was like, and it would always happen when I was somewhere I wasn't usually. So like if I was sleeping in my
Mm,
parents' room or in the living room or something, that's when it would happen. Which I don't know what the correlation with that is, but my point here is that alone is terrifying. But to
yeah.
have it be involve your child, I I I would pee myself.
Yeah. I think the wild thing is that a lot of people actually have these stories and nobody shares them.
Yeah.
Which I understand why, for sure. And I don't share my story with a lot of people, except now I've shared it with all of our listeners. But yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting thing.
I think I would have done literally everything you did after the fact, except for I don't know if I would have been able to confront the spirit the way you did. Maybe I would because yeah, you mess with my kid and I'm like, you know, I do literally the amount of bugs I have touched in the last year is tenfold what I had touched before because he wanted me to and I would do anything for you. But oh my God, Emmy.
Yeah, the story makes it sound like it was like boom, 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 but it was actually like a lot of processing between
Mhm,
steps. Like it was
mhm.
like, okay, like I'm gonna feel into this. I know what the right thing is. I know who I should contact, but I'm not really ready.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not as lockstep as it sounds. There's
Right.
definitely a lot of like contemplation that goes into a scenario like that.
Did you have any other like experiences outside of that one with Evie where you were like something is connected to her?
No, but
No.
with our oldest child, Fox, so the other story I was actually going to share, which I'll just touch on a tiny bit, he had extreme night terrors until
Mm,
he was about 6 or 7.
mm.
And that's actually where sleep paralysis isn't kicking in when it should.
Oh,
And
okay.
so at first I thought that the night terrors were he was waking up, he was grumpy, and so he was throwing a fit.
Mm,
And through research and understanding them better, I realized, and through the experience I was going to share, which I guess I'll share, one night he woke up and he walked into our kitchen, which is right over to the left of me, standing right by the dining room table. And he looked at me and he said, straight in the eyes, I want my mom. Can you please take me back to her? And that's when I realized he wasn't awake. He was maybe somewhere else, but definitely not present and coherent in this particular reality. And so there are many experiences for him like that. When he was very young, he talked all the time about these brothers that he has. He has 16 brothers, he has 18 brothers, he communicates with them. And he's also most connected to the miscarriage baby that we had, Sonny. He will say things like, I know Sonny because he's my brother and he sits next to me in the car. And he's 9, and the veil has always been thin for him, and it's getting less and less thin all the time. But he is a very spiritually connected, which I'm the oldest in my family. He's our oldest, and so I think it's just kind of like I mentioned at the beginning, that bloodline, which
yeah. Oh
like
my
it's
gosh.
just a spirituality that runs through our lineage.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That okay, that's crazy. That is insane. I think I would again pee my pants if Teddy was like, "Where's my mom?" I'd be like, "Oh my God." I had one experience like that where well, okay, one of them I don't know if it was legit or not because Teddy's only 2.5. He speaks very, very well, but this was he would have been 22 months. Still spoke very well.
Hmm.
And we were rocking and he said, "It's my twin sister. It's my twin sister." He kept saying my twin sister. And that was right after I'd had that reading where the medium she talked about waiting for Teddy and Teddy waited for me and now this baby is waiting for me and she said they're going to be very close. They could have almost been twins, but they just knew they couldn't come at the same time that you weren't ready for that. And so when he said twin sister, I was like,
Chills again.
okay. Okay. But then the other time he was saying it again. This is terrible. I thought he was saying, my sister, my sister. We were in the kitchen and I was like, again? And I turned around and he had a pair of scissors in his hand. That was
Oh
probably more
god.
scary than anything to see your 2-year-old holding a pair of scissors. You're like, "What?" Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our 2 listener tales that we have for today. So this story I got from somebody, and I don't know if she wanted her name shared, so I'm not going to. Her daughter was about 6 or 7 months old and couldn't stand independently, but one night she saw her on her monitor in the middle of the night, standing in the middle of her crib, not holding on to anything and just looking down. She said nothing happened, but like she can't stand and she's just standing there looking down.
I'm terrified right now because it's so like with all of the clips we've seen on TikTok and social media of like infants in cribs, like it's
Yep.
so easy to visualize this and picture it, and I'm terrified.
Yeah, and like just all of the creepy photos of like little kids just, standing and like in the, just out of nowhere. Like it's just so spooky in itself. It reminds me though of that one TikTok that went viral of that mom who thought she saw something in her daughter's crib, and it was actually her. And so she like sees herself on the monitor, and she's like freaks out. That would actually
It's such a good one.
the Jesus out of me.
Evie is always waving, and I'm like, who's there? I wish I knew who was there.
Yeah.
Hope it's someone good.
Or I don't want to know.
Okay, I'll share our next story. This person did say that their name could be used, so it's Melinda. She is local to my area. I used to work with her, which is super fun. She's a great person. So here's what she said. When Miles, her son, was 2 or 3, she lived right next to a cemetery, and his bedroom window view was of the cemetery. And at night, it was always spooky when he would when he would stand on his bed and look out the window into the cemetery. I would always hear him chatting away on the baby monitor, but could never make out what he was saying. His eyes would glow on the monitor because of the night view.
Oh my God.
It makes me think, like, I wonder what he really was talking about. Like,
Ugh.
you know, like, was it cohesive English, or like was it something else?
Speaking to a German spirit.
Yeah. In that particular neck of the woods, yes.
That's check. Oh.
Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah, no. So if you like these podcasts, these Witch in the Woo podcasts, let us know. Of course, if you have stories of your own, please submit them, or any witchy woo-woo-y topics that you want us to talk about. We would love to do that. We're not going to be talking about this a lot because our primary focus is motherhood, is birth stories, is matrescence, all the things that we are passionate about. But this is a big aspect of our personalities and something that we enjoy talking about together. So we figured we might as well put it out in podcast form as well. We're going to be back next week with a birth story, and that's going to be Teddy's birth story. So make sure to tune in for that one. And if you have a birth story that you would like to share on the podcast, you can also email us that. We'll put our contact in the show notes there for Witch and Woo stories, for your birth story, and any other feedback or topics you'd like us to cover as well. Anything else, Emmy?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. This was a super fun conversation. I'm excited to do this again. And I also want to say that if you really don't like it, that's fine. And no need to message us.
Yeah. You don't need to tell us if you don't like it. We're probably going to still do this no matter what. So if you're like, this is not for me, then it's not for you. Thank you guys so much for listening to this very different episode. To connect with us, you can find all of our social medias in the show notes, as well as our websites for all of our services. If you like this podcast, it helps us out so much for you to write a review, give it 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, share it with a friend, share it with social media, wherever you share it really helps us out. Thank you so much for listening. We love doing this, and we'll see you next week for Teddy's birth story.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cut that out. Bye.